Once the mud wall is dry, its resistance to all kinds of inclemencies will be remarkable, as the passage of time has left evidence in the centenary constructions. This construction, which has begun with the cleaning and leveling of the site, has as its starting point the elevation of one of the pillars based on ashlars joined with mud. Its leveling is guaranteed by the perpendicularity of the plumb line. These boards, without fixed measurements, used to be 1.5 meters long and 1 meter high. Their fastening to form the formwork box was done by means of some crossbeams called queron, which gave a separation of 0.5 meter or the measure that the craftsman wanted to give to the thickness of the wall. The closing of the free side of the formwork was made with a wooden board called tajadera, which in turn prevented the boards from joining together. Normally, the houses built with mud walls were raised on a base of ashlar masonry, about 0.5 meter high. For smaller scale buildings, a layer of stone at the base protected the wall from the humidity of the ground. The soil to be used in the construction of the mud wall is the one provided by the environment itself and must have clay and a lot of stone as an essential characteristic. As the masters in the matter say, the soil must have a lot of gravel because the gravel is the support of the wall. The rammer is a block of wood weighing 6 to 8 kilos with a round base in some cases and a square base in others. The truncated pyramid shape allows the tamper to fit better to the corners of the formwork, better hitting all the corners. Once the wooden box is filled with several layers of compacted soil and each block of mud wall is finished, the formwork is disassembled to advance laterally in the construction. The compacted soil block is placed outdoors. It will gradually lose moisture, gaining in turn inconsistency. The assembly of the formwork, or the manufacture of the adjoining block, is carried out by mounting the boards on a previous piece of wall. The process is repeated with the same technique for each one of the blocks, a layer of soil sprinkled with water and tapped with a rammer until it reaches the height of the formwork. The small layers or slices of 8 to 10 centimeters high of Cascallo soil, lightly moistened, require great skill and practice to be pounded with a mallet or rammer. To pound is the name given to this work of continuously beating the layer of soil, uniting all the particles until a compact and resistant mass is left. The dull noise of the pounding of the rammer indicates the moment when it is convenient to add a new layer of soil, revealing at the same time any failure in the quality of the pounding. As at the beginning of the wall, the closure is made by raising an ashlar pillar. In addition to the knowledge of working with the soil, the master mason had to know the technique of carving the stone as a construction element. Adapting each stone block to a specific shape and structure requires a minimum knowledge of stone masonry. The plumb line, a faithful ally of the stonemason, guarantees the perpendicularity of the construction. Building with soil is not limited only to mud walling. Its combination with other elements of the same raw material, such as adobe or bricks, can be seen in many constructions of this type. The blocks of mud wall of the upper row are placed alternating with those of the lower row, avoiding that the beginning and end cuts of the new blocks coincide with those below. In this way, the center of each upper block must coincide with the joint of the two lower blocks. This alternate placement ensures greater solidity of the whole building, avoiding possible openings. A good stonemason should have strong arms and a lot of thrust. To prevent the soil from getting muddy and sticking to the tamper during pounding, after sprinkling the layer of soil with water to moisten it, a light layer of dry soil is poured on. In spite of this, normally, the particles of wet soil remain fixed to the base of the rammer. For the manufacture of the mud, for the union of the stones of the pillars, the same type of soil is used as for the mud wall, once sieved to leave the finest particles. The stones of the pillars are placed one on top of the other and starting from the corner towards the sides. The stone that fills the empty space is called trescanton and serves to maintain the horizontality and balance of the pillar. The pressure of the soil compacted on the boards of the formwork is so great that it is necessary to leave in its manufacture a small separation between each one of the boards that compose them, through which the humidity and the force of the soil can escape, preventing the boards from cracking. The soil used in the construction of the mud walls was sometimes mixed with slacked lime to obtain a strong and resistant mortar. Some master masons would remove the soil they were going to use before winter and leave it in piles to be cooked by the weather, occasionally ventilating it. Unforeseen storms and rains became a fatal enemy during construction. In such cases, it was necessary to protect the piece of construction against water. Once the mud wall is dry, its resistance to all kind of inclemencies will be remarkable, as the passage of time has left evidence in the centuries-old constructions. The upper taper of the mud wall and the lower one are differentiated by a layer of stones placed at will, and by the holes left by the queron or crossbeams when they are extracted. The trunks of pine or fir, selected to the right size, are the most appropriate to support the whole roof of the house. All deciduous trees are cut in waning and evergreen trees in crescent. If, in addition to not cutting in the corresponding moon, it is done during the sapenia season, that is to say, in spring, the bark must be removed from each of the trunks in order to prevent them from being damaged. The wood of chenebro or juniper, for its resistance to the weather and to the inclemencies of time, cut in square, is the most appropriate to make the gate. Generally, and within the simplicity that characterizes this type of construction, the roofs are gabled. For this, the main and rear facades must end in a gable, carrying the corresponding slope, which is usually 35%. To make the knife, it is called to the configuration of the walls that will give form to the roof. The central timber of the roof, stronger than the others, receives the name of bridge. Once fixed to the apexes of the gable of the building, it will receive the weight of the rest of the timbers. The cross timbers are placed keeping a uniform distance between them and resting one end on the bridge and the other on the side walls. The separation of some timbers with others are closed with adobe blocks. The boxwood, or bucho, due to its hardness and resistance, constitutes an excellent base for the placement of the tiles. Because of its transversal disposition on the timbers placed in the direction of the waters, the buchos constitute a framework of scarce heat conductibility. The tile used for the total closing of the roof is the corrugated tile, normally called Arab tile. It is arranged in rows of pieces with the concave part facing upwards, forming channels to collect rainwater, and conducted out of the building, alternating with overlapping rows with the convex part facing upwards, in such a way that they pour the water into the adjoining rows. In some buildings, the construction was finished with the plastering of the walls. For this purpose, a mixture of sand and water was used, with hydraulic lime, which acted as a binding agent. The application of this mortar increased the solidity and resistance of the walls to the inclemency of the weather. Nowadays, the construction of walls with mud is practically abandoned. Today, the sense of speed and practicality predominates over the many advantages that this type of construction has demonstrated throughout history. Technological autonomy with materials of minimum cost. Ecological stability with a minimum energy input. Durability over time and, above all, its ability to insulate against cold and heat.